Do you think that the topic for abductions is speculations a lot about this topic, about abductions?
Well,
just to make money, because it sounds crazy.
I suspect that there are a number of people who do claim that, but I think some of them are, in their own mind at least, believe this has actually happened to them. Now, I don't like to get into too much politics here, but the American government has been involved in the subject of mind control for decades.
You mean the psychotronic weapon?
Drugs, psychotronics, and probably some other types of mind control or mind enhancement experiments. MK Ultra is an example of one of those. MK Naomi is another. There was another one called Project Artichoke. What I'm trying to say is that some of these abductees, and I know this sounds pretty far out, but some of these abductees may have been abducted by our own government and subjected to some kind of mind control experiment to see if they can control the minds of certain individuals. And I'm not so inclined to think that they're just fabricators or liars. I suspect that what is happening is that they've been subjected to mind control and they actually believe that they were abducted by extraterrestrials. And then in some cases, I believe that a few people have actually been abducted by extraterrestrial beings for the purpose of scientific...
Travis Wallace?
Travis Walton may be one case.
Actually, that he's a... I don't think so that he was abducted. He was taken.
Okay.
Because, it's my opinion. I'm going to talk with him today sometime about his abduction story. So I think, my guess, he was very close to this aircraft. And because he was very close, he was shocked or even dead after this encounter. And because these guys, they knew what's going on there, they took it to give him life back. It's my guess.
Could be.
And probably they fixed him, but they just put him in the wrong place.
That's right. They returned him in a different place than where he was picked up.
But the more important is that he's alive.
That's very true.
Yeah. This is my guess.
Another reason for extraterrestrials being here, and I've heard this suggested by other people, is that maybe, perhaps, some of them here are for rest and recreation. Now, this is like a Star Trek episode, where the crew members of the USS Enterprise go on a rest and recreation tour to some planet, and they're transported down or they're landed, and they're there for recreational purposes. Yet another reason is this planet may be a source of valuable minerals, flora or fauna. Isn't it possible that some minerals that are found on Earth may not be available on other planets? Possibly they're looking for particular plants, for example. This is highly speculative, but it is one reason for why they might be visiting. Let me list another thing. There was a film called The Day the Earth Stood Still years ago in the 50s. And in that particular film, the extraterrestrial beings were here to warn us and to give us an ultimatum. Now, in the film from Hollywood, the warning was you need to stop nuclear testing. and that if the U.S. government didn't stop U.S. testing, there was going to be a very serious consequence. And so to prove how serious this was, they stopped everything that was electrically powered in the world, and everything came to a stop. That's the day the Earth stood still. So it possibly could be a warning or ultimatum.
Yeah. Can you move now a little bit in the space, because this is your part, basically. Okay. There's a lot of speculation, and I need to know the truth about this. I mean, many people talk about weaponizing of the space, even it's already done.
Some people think that. That's true.
What do you think?
Well, first of all, I'm not in favor of the weaponization of space, but I have to be realistic about this. Yesterday I was speaking about spacecraft carriers, and specifically those that have been designed, developed, and built for the U.S. Navy, which I believe is true. And once you get the military in space, unfortunately, it's quite logical that they would take some weapon systems with them. Now, when Ronald Reagan was president here, most people recall that there was a program called the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, otherwise known as Star Wars. And during the Star Wars program, which was heavily supported by Dr. Edward Teller, I might add, they conducted any number of technological developments involving particle beams, rays, and laser guns, and other weapon systems, spending billions of dollars on them. And eventually the name was changed from SDI to something else, but I have no reason to believe that that didn't continue on. I would suggest that if the U.S. government, in one form or another, did build large spacecraft carriers and transporters, they would probably contain some kind of weapon systems. But I have never heard specifically of any of them to date, and so I wouldn't have any knowledge about it. But there have been...
But it's possible.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. If you have the U.S. Navy operating a 1,000-foot spacecraft carrier, which might be capable of transportation to the moons of Jupiter, I would imagine they would have some kind of possible laser system. I mean, I've heard reports just this week about green laser beams and blue laser beams coming down from space, apparently, possibly being tested. But I would imagine that there would be some kind of weapons in space. Now, just as an aside, there was a proposal for a non-nuclear missile, let's call it, that could be launched from a military space station, and it was known as the Rods from God. I didn't name it, that's just the name of it, but these were basically telephone pole size missiles that were non-nuclear but could be launched from space. They were about, like I say, 20 feet long by about 1 foot in diameter, and they were specifically designed to be launched from space, and as they became as the velocity increases as it went towards the Earth, these were designed to penetrate the surface of the Earth and destroy underground bunkers and facilities. Whether that was ever built or not, I don't know, but it was called Rods from God.
You mentioned that you've been in Area 51.
I've been outside of it. Yes.
Oh, outside.
Not inside, no.
Because I was outside also.
Yeah. No, I think
close to the gate.
I think I need to declare, be absolutely honest, I am strictly an outsider. I like to consider myself as an advanced novice. I am not an expert. I have never been inside any of these facilities. I have flown over some of them, however, but I've never been inside.
Okay.
That's just a
It's good to know. It's good to know.
fair declaration.
Okay, good. President Obama, he shut down the space program, and now President Trump wants to go to the moon. He don't want to go to Mars. Why?
Well, you're getting into an area of great speculation here. There is a current plan under the current administration of building a fairly large space station that would orbit the moon, and this is called the Deep Space Gateway. And it's at this space station, at the what we call the Deep Space Gateway space station. They're planning to build another spacecraft. Technically, it would be a spacecraft carrier, and it would be called the Deep Space Transport. And this is a combined multinational effort to construct, through modular design, a spacecraft that will, in 2036 or thereabouts, be sent on a round trip to Mars. This is being contemplated by NASA, the European Space Agency, Japan, Canada, and Russia. In case of Russia, this is the group called Roscosmos. Now, 1 week ago or thereabouts, President Putin announced the design and development of what he called the Super Heavy Lift Launch Vehicle. NASA has been developing the Space Launch System for some time now. And also, in the United States, we have a company called SpaceX, which has just recently successfully test flown what they call Falcon Heavy. And all of three of these launch systems, they're all rockets, by the way, using chemical propellants, but they're all to be used to create this space station around the moon for future construction of a base on the moon and bases ultimately on Mars.
So we don't have any bases in the moon?
I didn't say that.
Okay. Or maybe we have.
All right. Let me just say this. NASA has a budget of $19 billion per year. The Department of Defense has an annual budget now of $639 billion. That's 7/10 of $1 trillion. NASA is not funded sufficiently to keep up with existing technology that has been developed by other American companies in what's called either acknowledged special access programs or unacknowledged special access programs. We currently have the technology, at least in the United States, that would allow anti-gravity propulsion. Stephen Greer, who is a fairly well-known UFO researcher, has stated that the United States achieved one form of anti-gravity propulsion in 1954. And I have every reason to believe that that's not the only one that currently exists. It's been claimed that in the 1980s, the United States Navy was operating a fleet of spacecraft called Solar Warden that operated strictly on anti-gravity propulsion. And there are individuals, all three of them now, who have been through the military, acknowledge that they have gone through mind control and mind expansion programs, but claim that in the late 1980s there were 8 existing secret spacecraft on the order of 1,000 feet in length. And if you had 8 of these in the late 80s that were capable of interplanetary flight, I can't imagine why they wouldn't have been used. And if you have that capability of 8 of these 1,000-foot spacecraft carriers, or call them heavy transports, whatever name you want to use, I know how I would use them. I would put one in semi-permanent orbit around the Earth. I would send one to the moon to build 1 or more bases on the moon and investigate what is on the other side of the moon. There may be existing ancient structures built by extraterrestrial beings on the other side of the moon. In any event, I would build a base on both sides of the moon. I would then send one of the other of these 8 spacecraft to Mars, and I'd build a base on Mars, and we would still have some left over, and I would send those to investigate and explore the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. And who knows, frankly, what the capabilities of these devices are. But in 1993, the former president of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works told me and about 150 other people that Lockheed Martin in 1993 had the technology to go to the stars. And he also said, we will never be able to get to the stars using rockets and chemical propellants. This was Ben Rich. And Mr. Rich at that time said we had to have a new technology to go to the stars. And when we had that technology, it would not take an entire lifetime to get to the nearest stars. It would be much quicker than that. And then he told me Lockheed Martin Skunk Works then had the technology, that new technology to do that. And in his final slide presentation, he showed an artist's conception of a flying saucer. And then he said, who knows what Lockheed Martin Skunk Works will be working on next. And to me, and the person that I was with, reading between the lines, this meant that Lockheed Martin had already achieved that. And there are a number of witnesses who have seen devices built apparently by Lockheed Martin Skunk Works in operation.
What is your prediction for the future?
Well, my prediction for the future is I'm 75 years old, and I don't want to wait 18 years to wait for some deep space transport to arrive in Mars and find out that there are already bases, human bases there.
That will be very surprising.
That is my prediction. In other words, you'll have this alliance of 4 nations and the European Space Agency sending in 2036 the deep space transport via rockets and chemical propellants to Mars, and they will arrive and discover that there's already a Russian and American and possibly an ESA base already there, and which had existed for decades before. And I'm quite serious about that. This is my hypothesis.
Okay.
I don't know that it exists, but I've heard people say that it does.
Okay.
Now.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time with us.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.